we need to unwind some of these sort of risk-off positions.
As a market strategist, then, are you sad to see the back of Janet Yellen? Are we going into kind of uncharted territory now?
You know, that's something that I think is really, that she's going to do a very good job, and the Fed has done when Bernanke to Yellen, a very good job at the transition and not unnerving the market. And one of the reasons that we don't expect any change in even language at tonight's meeting is that there has become a stated rule that an outgoing Fed chair has very calm and smooth water for the next Fed chair. So she will do whatever she can not to disrupt anything for Powell, who then has a nice, smooth platform to work off of.
Well, I'm interested to see what happens in the United States when it comes to interest rates, because, you know, for months now, they've been saying, you know, 3 interest rate hikes next year, absolutely, that's the way it's gone. And then just recently, there's even more chance now that there could be 4 interest rate hikes. I mean, what do you think of that?
Well, you know, this is the million-dollar question. You know, whoever gets this reflation story correct makes all the money. So this is what is being debated on the street, right? Than 4 or even 3 at this point. So we're under, we're less steep than the market.
Why should we care, though, about what's happening in the US here in Switzerland?
Well, that's the
other million-dollar question.
No, not the million, but that's what it's really all about. So, you know, if we brass tacks and we put everything aside, monetary policy, so central bank strategy has been really the core driver for asset prices in the last 10 years. You know, you can say, yes, there's been good corporate earnings, new technology, innovation, globalization, increased trade. You can all put but the core driver has been central banks suppressing risk, increasing risk appetite. If you look at the correlation between central bank balance sheet expansion and, say, the MSCI World Index, which is sort of a broad equity index, they're basically moving, you know, lock and step. So the more that central banks expand their balance sheet, the better that asset prices perform. So at the same time, if we start seeing central banks remove stimulus, first by the Fed with ruling off their balance sheet, increasing interest rates, then we start seeing the ECB move, the BOJ, the S&B. Then we could see potentially a correction in equity prices. Okay, well, we're running out of time here. Oh, okay. So I'm just going to ask you some quick-fire questions. Absolutely. One-word answers, if you will. Yes. For the SMI, number of rate hikes this year do you see? For Switzerland. So no rate hikes. And none. What we're going to be looking for in March very carefully is any minor change in language, and that's going to be critical. Okay, sustained levels on the SMI, how long do you think they'll last? Well, I think we'll continue to improve as long as we don't see any central banks going off the rail and shocking the markets. Industries to look out for? Interest rates? Industries here in Switzerland to look out for. I mean, you know, consumer products. I mean, what we're seeing is a broad expansion in employment globally, and that means people have more money and should spend on sort of consumer products, you know, on a base level. Things like Nestle, things like Swatches, low level. We're not talking about high-end luxury, but the middle game should continue to improve. And finally, Bitcoin. Hype or the real thing? We are an advocate of cryptocurrencies. We do believe there's a space for alternative currencies. Peter Rosentreich, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on The Living Markets. Well, after the break, we're going to be talking money on an Olympic scale. That's in our sports update, so stay with us for that. It's high energy and fast-paced, so buckle up as Front Seat brings you the latest news and views from the automotive world. Front Seat with Hannah Wise on CNN Money Switzerland.
The Newsmaker is the ultimate talk show where the biggest names in Switzerland tell you their most important stories. We delve into the economy, markets, politics, real estate, media, technology, and more to sharpen your mind and broaden your horizon. Every weekday from 8 to 9 p.m.
How do you turn your idea into a successful business in Switzerland? If you want to develop your business, have individual mentoring and coaching, optimize your business model, develop a marketing strategy, acquire new skills, learn how to network. Romandie Formation, business opportunities anywhere.
What is time? Time is definitely a weird thing, but as humans, we are deeply connected to it. We want more of it. We need more of it. The entire planet is at our fingertips, a single click away. Day and night, we are flooded by news, fake news, stories, commercials, pictures, videos, push messages, information in our digital world travels as fast as the blink of an eye. At CNNMoney Switzerland, we understand information is intrinsically linked to time.
Time directs us to the origin of a story.
Time allows us to watch it unfold.
Time is the tool we use to predict what's to come.
Our vision is to challenge news by turning a simple event into an entire story. CNNMoney Switzerland is designed to flow through information. Our network provides a unique take on live, worldwide financial news. From the heart of Europe, our live studio provides you with a detailed and sharp analysis, predicting what is yet to come. We are not your common news outlet. Instead, we act as a global catalyst of interconnected information. Watch CNNMoney Switzerland, because we value your time.
Let's talk more about the logistics involved in sending the Swiss Olympic team to Pyeongchang now. And joining us here in the studio is Matt Layton, our very own sports correspondent. So, Matt, what is actually making the success of this huge, huge project? What is really needed to make it happen?
It's Swiss logistics, as simple as that. They've been doing the Winter Games since 1924 in Chamonix. They know what they're doing. Swiss Olympics have put together a plan. The second that Sochi finished 4 years ago, it was Pyeongchang. So various delegates have been out there several times. You have to look at where you're going to stay. There's an Olympic village. Do you want to stay there, or do you need to have your athletes closer to the pistes, closer to the track? And so there's all sorts of challenges there. And what Swiss Olympics does is split it essentially into two sections. You have your sport. The management there is around about, well, it's exactly 171 athletes, all the coaches and stuff. You fly those out. Also, and that is Ralph Stockley, who's responsible for that. There's Roger Schnegg, who is the director of Swiss Olympic. He looks after the political situation, the security situation. There's 2 federal ministers going to be going out. The president, we believe, is going out for the opening. We have the sports minister going out for the closing. He has to look after the VIPs. So it's a massive logistical challenge, I suppose, to make sure everyone goes out, have a good time, and comes back safely.
It's all about teamwork in the world of sports, for sure. Now, let's talk about numbers here. How much does it all cost, and who pays the final bill?
Swiss Olympics. So it's a big, big story, but Swiss Olympics is the organisation who pays the cheque. They've estimated it's about a 4 million Swiss franc project over 4 years. There's a million things they have to take involved in, but if you break it down into the largest 4 or 5 different sections. So first of all, you have flights. Now, to go to Rio, they had a sponsor, but South Korea, they pay for their flights, about 750,000 Swiss for that. Then you have to look at the accommodation. Most people think that it's free. No, you have to pay for your food, your accommodation. If you're in a hotel, it can cost a fortune. It's about 730 Swiss francs. Then you have to look at the other side, medical bills, so the infrastructure, the machines, the massages and all the structures, and also putting everything in place. That's another 525,000 francs. And finally, to make the office pretty and functional, another 300,000 francs. So it's a lot of money to put the 350 people delegation, 171 athletes in place, but it's been well budgeted and it's going to be a success.
The massages will be very important, especially to treat all the sore muscles of the athletes.
Absolutely.
So for how long will these Swiss athletes stay, and where are they going to be accommodated?
Well, the Games, as we know, are 17 days, and they start in 8 days' time. But it's not as simple. 50 years ago, you were an amateur, so you paid for yourself, and you went out and for 3 or 4 weeks. Now it's not a case of that. It's a case of economics, and it's a case of commitments for the athletes. Most of them have had events in the last few days. So the freestylers have been in Aspen, Colorado. They have to come back here. Normally, Switzerland flies their athletes out there about 5 or 6 days before. They'll stay for the event, and then they'll come back about 2 days later. So that's the challenge. Who is going to be named to hold the flag at the opening ceremony? It's effectively someone who's popular, someone who's there, someone who's available. And the same thing at the closing ceremony. So it's all a case of the biggest delegation goes out in about 3 or 4 days' time. That's about 80 athletes. Where they're going to stay, as I mentioned in the opening, it's a case of where their actual venue is. There's the big hub, but there's the downhill skiers who'll be staying separately, the freestylers staying separately, some in condominiums and some in hotels. So it's a huge, great logistical challenge, but Switzerland's on top of it.
The excitement is definitely heating up. Thank you so much, Matt, for joining us.
Thank you.
And we'll have more from Matt tomorrow evening here on the Swiss Pulse. Now, it's time for one of our new CNN Money Switzerland programmes, and in the first edition of Front Seat, I'm talking to a young racing hopeful. Hello and welcome to Front Seat, the programme that brings you the very latest news and views from the auto world. In this edition, we're meeting an up-and-coming racing sensation, a former EPFL student with a high-profile father. This young man has been beating the odds to become one of the fastest rising stars in GP today. Let's welcome Ryan Tveter. Hi there.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. You are a pretty young driver, but you say that getting into the whole driving thing has been a bit of a baptism of fire because you started quite late.
Absolutely. My story of getting into racing is very different to most. I'm actually, when you look at the guys I compete against now in GP3, also in Formula 2, I'm on the older side, being 23, okay. And I hope I'm still young, but most people started in karts when they were 3 or 4 years old. If you look at Max Verstappen, he started in go-karts when he was 3 and 4 years old. And his mom was a European karting champion. His dad was a Formula 1 driver. So he was meant to be a racing driver. My story, I mean, I started racing when I was 17 through an introduction, through a friend when I was going to high school. I was applying to colleges. Racing was my dream ever since I could really talk, and I loved cars. But getting into motorsport and getting to where I am today was definitely a baptism by fire because I had no experience when I first started racing.
Well, tell me about your successes then, because it's been quite a year for you.
Obviously, yeah, it's been a breakthrough year in 2017. I finished 8th in the GP3 series, which is one of the feeder series to Formula 1, and came away with 3 podiums, 3 separate top 5s, and 78 points scored in the championship. So we finished 2nd in the team's championship, and overall it was a very strong year, and I'm really happy and proud of what we achieved. But looking forward to next year. Obviously my plans aren't confirmed yet, but should be very soon, and hopefully we can have an even stronger year.
Okay, how do you prepare for a race then? Tell me about that.
Preparing for a race starts in the weeks before the race, and we do a lot of karting, obviously the physical element, your nutrition, your sleep, all those things are key factors for your performance over the weekend. And then the week before, we'll do simulator sessions with the team. So all 4 drivers, we share the simulator, and we'll swap between, and that's also quite competitive and sort of gets you going and gets the competition going before the race weekend starts. And then when it actually comes to the weekend, we will walk the track, we review your data with your engineer, and really analyze everything to be able to, when you get on track, we have very limited track time. So when you get on track, you really need to perform straight away.
I was speaking to Neil Jani here on Front Seat just a few weeks ago, and he was telling me that his kind of sport of choice outside of karting and motor racing is snow skiing and snow hiking, because that actually is incredibly good for you in the preparation for a race, for your physical condition. What's your sport of choice?
I'd say my sport of choice, I really love cycling. I do a lot of cycling and some running as well, but I really enjoy squash. I think that's a great sport for hand-eye coordination, and also it's very interval-based. So I'd say cycling and squash are my two main sports outside of racing and karting.
All right, so that's the physical side. What about the mental side? How do you prepare for a race mentally? Because I understand that you actually kind of rely on your maths brain when it comes to that side of things. Obviously, because I started racing, it wasn't a natural thing for me. So I had to figure out ways where I could how I could learn and apply myself. And so when it came to moving forward as a driver, the big thing I found was studying the data and really analyzing the tracks and watching the video as much as I could in order to apply that when I got on track. So when it comes to the mental side now, obviously I still do that, but also visualization I think is a key aspect for any racing driver. So I do a lot of visualization before the race weekend and also before the session starts on track, and that tied in with the karting and the simulator I think are the two sort of biggest mental things you can do to prepare. And what about mind training specifically? Because you work with other driver trainers to kind of hone your mind and get you in that mindset for a race. I think for mind training, I actually have an app on my phone to practice some like reaction stuff and some brain games, let's say, to sort of switch your brain on. And then after that, I think the key thing is the visualization and the meditation. Okay, well, while we're talking about mind training, there is a company that provides around 3/4 of the drivers on the F1 starting grid with mental stamina. And they are turning their attentions now not to the racetrack, but to the boardroom as well. This report looks at how CEOs are benefiting from these F1 techniques, and it features someone very close to our guest Ryan.
This is Eric Tveter. He's the CEO of UPC, one of Switzerland's leading communications and entertainment companies. He's responsible for 7,000 employees, an annual revenue of over 3 billion francs, and the expectations of almost 7 million customers.
There is a fair amount of stress in the decisions you make, the risks you take, and I think that's why it's important to find a way to relieve the stress that all of us have as a CEO or in any high-performing role.
5 years ago, he turned to an unexpected industry to help his performance. Hinsa has been helping drivers perform their very best under high pressure. Eric's son, Ryan, a GP driver, introduced him to the program.
I was really impressed with the change that it had on Ryan. He was fully confident. He was much more focused. And I think what Aki's methodology, his philosophy, his program does, it focuses you on what's important.
Formula One drivers and CEOs in general have surprisingly many things in common. There's the pressure of having to perform as an individual in an environment that's highly competitive, very complex, and often in constant change.
By word of mouth, Hinsa's success on the racetrack quickly led to the boardroom. Now they are setting up permanent offices here in Switzerland to deal with demand.
By the nature of the job, CEOs can become isolated. They can become lost in the perspective of needing to do more and more and more. And as you go to more senior levels, the risks of burnout become ever higher.
And here in Zurich, the rates of so-called burnout are the highest in Switzerland. Every year, it costs the Swiss economy 5.7 billion francs.
I'm a much happier person today than I was, 4 or 5 years ago. That's not to say I was unhappy, but it's given me more balance. And I think for that reason, I'm coping with stress in a much better way, and I feel better.
Eric is just one of an increasing number of executives benefiting from the training first used with Formula One drivers. With that, they ensure they stay in gear and on the road to success.
Well, that was, of course, the UPC CEO, Eric Tveter.
My dad.
Your dad. How do you feel about kind of introducing him to this whole kind of mind technique and how he's using it in his work?
I think I've certainly noticed a change with my dad after, well, he was the one who originally met Aki and introduced me to Hinsa. And that's how I started working with them. But when they started developing the CEO program through what they're learning in Formula One, I'd say it's made a huge difference in how he, like you said, how he copes with stress, how he has happiness, and just being a more balanced individual. And I think that's a key part of racing is the balance between your physical, not training hard, but not training too much, making sure it's all about energy and managing your energy well. So when you come to the track, there's nothing else for you to think about. You can just focus on your job and focus on driving.
What are some of the things that they tell you to do or help you with specifically?
Specifically, I mean, the 3 questions Aki asked me during my first meeting with him was, who are you, what is your purpose, and are you in control? So when I speak with my coach, Heikki, who was Sebastian Vettel's performance coach during his 4 years winning back-to-back world championships. So Heikki is obviously a very qualified person. He knows what's going on. So those are obviously very deep questions and something you have to take a lot of time to think about. But knowing and learning about yourself and learning the answers to those questions and discussing that really helps you when it comes to the moment when you have to perform and all that pressure is on you and there's a lot going on, situations are changing, it's about to rain, it's qualifying, you have 1 lap. It helps you to let all of that go and just be in the moment. And that's where the visualization, the switching your mind on with the little app and doing those small things well and trying to become better each day in every training, that's where it all comes together.
Okay, well, it's very interesting to see kind of the family connection as well with the racing and the boardroom. But while we're talking about family, your mum is your manager. How does that work?
So basically, I mean, we came from nothing in racing. My parents didn't know anything about racing. I mean, I knew about racing. It was my passion. But
it was your dream, but you had no...
It was my dream and my passion, but I had no way into it because obviously my dad is in the telecommunications industry. My mom used to work, she was the VP of corporate development at United Artists. And so they're very in telecommunications, not racing, which became important because in the end, racing is a business as well. And it was a huge learning curve for my parents and for my mom, but my mom has an incredible business sense, and when it came to contracts and negotiating with sponsors, she's very switched on and was able to learn about the racing stuff. I mean, we all learned together, so it's been a huge learning curve, but I wouldn't be able to be where I am today without my mom and my dad and us working together to
So you make quite a team yourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Family Tveter. Okay, and I mean, a lot of racers come from a pretty financially secure background. I mean, has that helped you?
We're very blessed, but I wouldn't say we have what a lot of other people in racing are able to do with their finances. And so sponsorship and getting investors and finding a way to make, obviously racing is an extremely expensive sport, and at the levels below Formula One, it's up to the driver to be able to raise the budget and bring the budget to the teams because the teams need to operate. So that's been a huge challenge, but this past season I've gotten the support of KFC and Pertamina and Pepsi, and they've been all so supportive, and I'm so happy of the success we've had, and I hope we can...
And that's down to the business mind of your mom.
Exactly, and that's down to the business side, because in the end, racing is a business, and there is a high return for upside potential for sponsors. And as an American driver looking forward, I think that gives me a huge advantage over others, because even getting into Formula One, you need to be able to align some sort of corporate backing. So we're working on that, and now as the top-ranked American driver racing in the feeder series in Europe, I think that can come together soon.
Okay, we'll talk about the future in just a moment, but I wanted to bring up, you know, the fact that you do a lot of charity work as well. You do give back.
Yes, that's an extremely important thing for me, for my family. My parents always taught me it's not what you have, it's what you give. And this year, or since 2016, I've worked with 3 different charity partners, the Lessons for Life Foundation, MTV Staying Alive, and Right to Play, which is which all 3 are amazing organizations, but Right to Play works with millions of children every month, and I think using racing as a platform to help promote them and raise money, I've raised over tens of thousands of pounds for these charities, so that makes me feel really good, and it's not just about racing, it's also about giving back.
Okay, so what does 2018 hold for you then? Well, if you can divulge anything.
Nothing's announced yet, but
okay.
I would say, given that I'm still living in Italy, that's a good enough. And I raced for an Italian team last year. That's a good sign. Okay, but I was kind of meaning, maybe let's look a little bit further afield. You would like to kind of be the next Formula One American driver. I mean, is that a realistic dream, do you think? I think so. I mean, this year has been a huge breakthrough year, and I'm working even harder to make the upcoming season even better. My target is to win the championship, and I think that's an absolutely viable target and something I need to achieve in order to get the license points for an F1 super license. And then after that, it's more about aligning the corporate side, and obviously in the end it's about your performance, and so I just have to keep focused on that, and the other things will fall into place. But it's something you have to keep in mind to be able to win or finish in the top 3 in GP3, and then moving on to Formula 2, finish in the top 5, and then I'll have enough super license points to race in Formula 1.
And just from what you're saying, I mean, you have a kind of very international background. You're driving for an Italian team. Your father and your family live here in Switzerland, but you also have an American passport. I mean, what's your connection to Switzerland? You were at EPFL, weren't you?
Yes. So Switzerland, I went to boarding school for high school because I didn't want to have to change schools again. So I'm an only child, and my family, we've moved around a fair bit. But for me, New York really is home. And I wanted to go somewhere for high school where I wouldn't have to change schools if we moved.
Yeah.
So halfway through my first year in high school, my dad said, oh yeah, I'm going to start working in Switzerland, so we're going to live in Switzerland now too. I said, okay, I'm going to stay here. But I came during my school breaks, obviously, and during the summers from when I was 14 years old. So we've been here for almost 9 years now. So I love Switzerland. It's an amazing place, and I'm very lucky to be able to spend a lot of time here.
Okay, and I just want to pick up on one brilliant story that you told me when we first met, and it's about the fact that the FIA actually gave you your driving license before you could drive on real roads.
That's true. So I had a racing license at 17, which is when I had my first race. And in New York State, you had to be 18. Yeah, you could get your learner's permit, but you had to be 18 in order to get your driver's license, and it took months to get it. So I got my license in February of 2013, but after that, I had already lots of races under my belt. Half a season in Star Mazda, my first 3 races in 2011. So
I guess a driving test doesn't seem such a daunting task, I guess.
No, it was okay. It went pretty well. The guy was a bit surprised because I pulled in a slightly different way to get into the parking spot so I could back up and make it straighter. And he was like, what are you doing? And he was like, oh, okay.
Okay, and you can, of course, drive on real roads now. What do you drive?
I drive a Ford Focus RS in bright blue, which is my favorite color, as you can see from my helmet.
Yeah.
So if you see a bright blue Focus RS driving around Italy or Zurich, that's probably me.
Probably you. Okay.
Making lots of pops and bangs.
We will look out for you then, Ryan Tveter. Thank you very much indeed for joining us
Thank
here. That wraps up this edition of Front Seat. Thank you as well for watching. Until next time, drive safely. Bye-bye. Well, that's almost it from Living Markets as well this evening. Coming up next is The Big Picture, and Ana Maria Montero is joining me in the studio to give me a kind of roundup of what's coming, and it's a pretty big subject up next.
It is a pretty heavy subject, to change gears a little bit from your just Formula One story. It is very serious. We're going to be talking about cybersecurity, cybercrime. I don't know if you know this, Hannah, but it is up 30% in Switzerland just last year.
Okay, so this is a
huge
growing phenomenon.
Absolutely.
And an expensive phenomenon.
An expensive phenomenon, exactly. But it's not all doom and gloom. We will also be looking at solutions and things that not only companies can do, but also individuals, private individuals, to fend off these hackers a little bit, hopefully not struggle through these cyber crimes.
Okay, well, we'll be joining you in just a few minutes here on The Big Picture. Thank you, Ana Maria. Stay with us. Up next, it's the weather, and I'll be back with the Newsmaker at 8. Bye-bye.
CNN Money Switzerland weather. We start with the webcam of the day. Here is an overview of the values recorded in the last hours. And now the map of Swiss warnings. Let's have a look to the forecast for this afternoon. And for tomorrow. Here is an overview for the next days in German-speaking Switzerland. In western Switzerland. And south of the Alps. Thanks for following us.
The Big Picture zooms in on issues that matter to you and your wallet. Join us as we make sense of the world of business every weekday from 7 to 8 p.m.
The Newsmaker is the ultimate talk show where the biggest names in Switzerland tell you their most important stories. We delve into the economy, markets, politics, real estate, media, technology, and more to sharpen your mind and broaden your horizon every weekday from 8 to 9 p.m.
How do you turn your idea into a successful business in Switzerland? If you want to develop your business, have individual mentoring and coaching, optimize your business model, develop a marketing strategy, acquire new skills, learn how to network. Romandie Formation, business opportunities anywhere.
What is time? Time is definitely a weird thing, but as humans, we are deeply connected to it. We want more of it. We need more of it. The entire planet is at our fingertips, a single click away. Day and night, we are flooded by news, fake news, stories, commercials, pictures, videos, push messages, information in our digital world travels as fast as the blink of an eye. At CNNMoney Switzerland, we understand information is intrinsically linked to time.
Time directs us to the origin of a story.
Time allows us to watch it unfold.
Time is the tool we use to predict what's to come.
Our vision is to challenge news by turning a simple event into an entire story. CNNMoney Switzerland is designed to flow through information. Our network provides a unique take on live, worldwide financial news. From the heart of Europe, our live studio provides you with a detailed and sharp analysis, predicting what is yet to come. We are not your common news outlet. Instead, we act as a global catalyst of interconnected information. Watch CNNMoney Switzerland, because we value your time.
It's not a question of if, but when. Cybercrime has become a risk that we all face. And if you haven't been hacked yet, the chances are high you soon will. Cybercrime is on the rise and has jumped by around 30% in Switzerland. Globally, it's also a threat. Brad Smith is Microsoft's president and chief legal officer, and he highlights the need for vigilance.
The other thing we are absolutely seeing is more sophisticated nation-state attacks, governments pursuing these attacks. We talked in December publicly about the attack coming from North Korea. That was a very widespread attack last year. It affected 150 countries. But we all know it's not North Korea alone. We're seeing this from, frankly, some of the largest and most sophisticated and well-financed governments and militaries in the world.
In our Newsmaker Hour, we have exclusive access to Prince Alois of Liechtenstein at his castle in Vaduz. He gave us his thoughts on the EU's decision to place Switzerland on a so-called grey list of countries which need to do more on tax transparency.
This list is not due to Liechtenstein, and I think also the Swiss realized that it would be nice if Liechtenstein would have the power to set other countries on lists or to take them off the list. What we would have done, obviously, is taking Liechtenstein and Switzerland off the list if we would have the power. So this power lies not in Liechtenstein, but in Brussels, and I think also Switzerland has realized it.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to The Big Picture. I am Ana Maria Montero. Let's take a look now at some of the news making news here in Switzerland and around the world. The Swiss Federal Council has been outlining new plans for tax reform. That's after changes failed to pass last year. The aim is to introduce a special tax regime for intellectual property. This tax reform is key in helping get Switzerland out of the European Union's grey list of harmful tax jurisdictions. This evening, Foreign Minister Ignacio Cassis presented Switzerland's view on the bilateral relationships with the EU. He wants to enter negotiations for an institutional framework agreement in 2018. And hot off the heels of U.S. President Trump's speech at the World Economic Forum in Davos last week, Mr. Trump delivered his State of the Union address on Tuesday night. Over the course of his 80-minute speech, one of the longest ever, he heralded a soaring stock market, even as the Dow dropped on one of its worst days since 2016. And tax reform was also high on his list of his talking points, as President Trump bragged that the tax cuts Congress passed last year were the biggest in history.
Just as I promised the American people from this podium 11 months ago, we enacted the biggest tax cuts and reforms in American history.
The Federal Reserve met this week to discuss plans for the U.S. economy in 2018. Janet Yellen will sit as chair for the very last time this Wednesday. One thing the Fed will be looking at is the job market in the private sector. Hiring continues to outperform expectations, indicating the strength of the market. Signals like this will help the Fed decide how many rate hikes to make this year. New Chair Jerome Powell will replace Yellen on February 3rd. And a number of Russian oligarchs with Swiss links have appeared on a legal document published by the U.S. Treasury this week. It's been dubbed the Putin list. Authorities have to consider whether to sanction them in return for meddling in the 2016 presidential elections and interfering in Crimea. Gennady Timochenko, the founder of oil trader Gunfor, fertilizer king Dmitry Rybolovlev were listed along with Viktor Vekselberg, whose company Renova recently reduced its shares in Swiss tech firm Sulzer. And finally, it's a special day for sky gazers in Asia, Australia, and North America, as a super blue blood moon is in the sky this Wednesday. This full moon is unique, as it's the second full moon of the month, commonly known as a blue moon. It's also about 14% brighter than it normally is. Now, NASA is broadcasting views from numerous points seen by telescopes at its centers in California and Arizona. And ever heard of jackpotting? It's probably not what you think. Stay with us, and we'll tell you all about it. That's as we investigate cybercrime and what can be done to tackle it, here on The Big Picture. CNN Money Switzerland brings you the content you need, whenever, wherever you need it. On our website, cnnmoney.ch, or on your favorite social media platform. Only from CNN Money Switzerland.
The Newsmaker is the ultimate talk show where the biggest names in Switzerland tell you their most important stories. We delve into the economy, markets, politics, real estate, media, technology, and more to sharpen your mind and broaden your horizon. Every weekday from 8 to 9 p.m.
How do you turn your idea into a successful business in Switzerland? If you want to develop your business, have individual mentoring and coaching, optimize your business model, develop a marketing strategy, acquire new skills, learn how to network. Romandie Formation, business opportunities anywhere.
What is time? Time is definitely a weird thing, but as humans, we are deeply connected to it. We want more of it. We need more of it. The entire planet is at our fingertips, a single click away. Day and night, we are flooded by news, fake news, stories, commercials, pictures, videos, push messages, information in our digital world travels as fast as the blink of an eye. At CNN Money Switzerland, we understand information is intrinsically linked to time.
Time directs us to the origin of a story.
Time allows us to watch it unfold.
Time is the tool we use to predict what's to come.
Our vision is to challenge news by turning a simple event into an entire story. CNN Money Switzerland is designed to flow through information. Our network provides a unique take on live, worldwide financial news. From the heart of Europe, our live studio provides you with a detailed and sharp analysis, predicting what is yet to come. We are not your common news outlet. Instead, we act as a global catalyst of interconnected information. Watch CNN Money Switzerland, because we value your time.
Hackers seem to come up with new ways to target us every day. Right now in America, the U.S. Secret Service is warning about a hacking scheme called jackpotting. It's a technique thieves are using to steal wads of cash from ATMs. They've already snatched more than $1 million. Samuel Burke is following all of the developments.
What we are seeing here is criminals turning ATMs into slot machines. Now, in the past, we've seen skimming devices used, but that's when the criminals actually get a hold of our information, the consumers. We walk up, use our ATM cards, and then those devices give them our information and they steal money from us. This takes it to a whole other level. What one of the ATM makers that's been hit here is describing are criminals getting physical access to the ATM, replacing the hard drive, just like you have a hard drive in your computer at home. ATMs also have hard drives. Those are being replaced, and then the criminals are actually using an endoscope. Now, that's a tool you think of usually being used in a doctor's office, but in this case, it's being used so that the criminals can see inside of the ATM, the image popping up, live video on their smartphone, and they're actually resetting a button. They're pushing it so it resets the ATM, and then cash is spewing out. Now, what's very alarming here is that this started here in Europe, and we've seen it in Asia. Lately, we've seen it in Mexico. Now it's spreading to the United States. The ATMs that are being targeted are usually standalone ATMs, the types that you might see inside a pharmacy or even at a bank, but in the drive-through section of a bank. And this is a reminder to all of us about the importance of updating our computer systems, because take a look at what one of the makers is saying, Diebold Nixdorf. They say the ATMs that are currently being targeted are older, legacy Diebold units. It's important to remind financial institutions to keep their security up to date, much like updating the batteries in your fire alarm. So whether it's reporting on cybersecurity for your computer, your phone, or even for ATMs, so many times it comes back to one principle, that you have to keep your phone and your computer updated, just like these companies need to keep ATMs updated so that we don't walk by pharmacies and see the ATMs spewing out cash. I'm Samuel Burke in London.
Now, here in Switzerland, cybercrime continues to be a concern. Attacks on Swiss companies have jumped 30%, according to a 2017 study by KPMG. Meantime, Swiss Defense Secretary Guy Parmelin has also highlighted the scale of the challenge. During a speech in Zurich at ETH, the politician said, "Today, everything is so closely interconnected that attackers could cause great damage with very little effort and with very little chance of being detected." There are also plans to expand cyber defense resources in the Army and Intelligence Service, with around 100 new specialists by 2020. Now, globally, Forbes estimates that costs will explode in the coming years, and it could reach at least $6 trillion a year by the year 2021. Now, Brad Smith is Microsoft's president and chief legal officer. Martina Fuchs spoke with him about his strategy going forward.
Well, at Microsoft, we absolutely recognize that we and other tech companies have the first responsibility to protect people from cybersecurity attacks. What that means is, in the first instance, we keep putting new features into our products and services to make them stronger and to enable customers to use these cybersecurity features. The second thing we're doing is really working with customers so they know how to use these features, to enable consumers to know how to protect their emails, to enable businesses how to protect all of their data. The third thing we're doing is reaching out and encouraging governments to do more. We believe that this requires a shared responsibility. The only way to be successful is for the tech companies, customers, and governments to work together.
Last year, Microsoft said it would invest $1 billion annually into the security against cyber attacks. Have you increased this figure since?
Well, every year we're spending more on cybersecurity than the year before. We've been spending well over $1 billion now each year. We employ 3,500 cybersecurity engineers. It may be the largest population of cybersecurity engineers that you'll find in any institution on the planet. So we know we need to do more every year. Of course, what we really need to do is not only put more resources into addressing the problem, but really provide new innovations to make that investment effective.
How much of a burden is the investment into cybersecurity for your overall budget?
Well, at the end of the day, cybersecurity is an imperative. People are only going to use technology that they trust. They will trust technology only if it is safe, if it is secure, if it keeps their information private. So we think about it through that lens. It's sort of one of our first duties, I think, to fulfill for our customers. I think the biggest challenge is that the threat keeps growing because it's a bit of a cat and mouse game. We keep making things stronger. Other people find new ways to attack them, whether they're very sophisticated organized criminal groups or increasingly nation states, militaries, governments developing cyber tools and cyber weapons.
Which new forms of cyber attacks are you seeing at the moment, and where do they come from?
Well, we are seeing an increase in two kinds of threats. One is more sophisticated organized criminal enterprises engaged in cybersecurity attacks. Those are really financially motivated. They're seeking to first get people's passwords, but then ultimately get their bank accounts and the like. And increasingly, these are coming from countries that the rule of law does not necessarily reach. So we're seeing this come from countries in Africa, some countries in Southeast Asia. The other thing we are absolutely seeing is more sophisticated nation-state attacks, governments pursuing these attacks. We talked in December publicly about the attack coming from North Korea. That was a very widespread attack last year. It affected 150 countries. But we all know it's not North Korea alone. We're seeing this from, frankly, some of the largest and most sophisticated and well-financed governments and militaries in the world.
The WannaCry attack last December was actually due to a flaw in Microsoft's software systems. How have you changed your security systems since?
Well, we are constantly updating our software. In the case of WannaCry, it basically exploited a vulnerability in older versions of Windows. And so, of course, our first message is to people, please update your systems, apply our patches so that you are running the best and most current protection. WannaCry, in part, attacked Windows XP, which was 16 years old. And so one of the big challenges we have in protecting customers is that there are customers that are not using our most current products. So it's like being able to go literally almost back in time where people are using the most advanced cyber weapons of 2017 or 2018 and attacking the technology of 2001 and 2002. Well, of course, the technology of 2001 and 2002 is going to lose in that regard. So we ask people, please update your systems.
Britain and several other governments have actually accused North Korea to be behind this attack. Has this been confirmed already?
On the 19th of December last year, 6 governments, the United States, the United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and Canada, all simultaneously announced their conclusion. And we at Microsoft have said we concur with that. We've done our own research. And the WannaCry attack, I think in people's view, was launched by a specific group that then the law enforcement and intelligence agencies have connected with North Korea. It is the same group that attacked Sony in that well-publicized hack, which took place in 2014.
To which extent does Microsoft work together with, the National Security Agency in the States or like the FBI, with security agents to fight cyber attacks?
I think at Microsoft and across the tech sector, it is very important that we work with each other, and increasingly we are in more important ways, and that's good, I think. It's also important that we work with governments, but we need to be principled and we need a defined approach. So in general, we want to work with governments to identify cyber threats, to protect against cyber attacks, and at the same time, we need to be very clear. We have the private information of customers, and so the private information of customers should only be provided to governments pursuant to the rule of law and to strong protection of privacy. So we need to actually advance both of these goals at the same time.
In which areas do you think that most research and development is needed to fight cyber attacks?
I think we have this incredible opportunity with new learning, including new research, to continue advance in cybersecurity. Part of this involves an understanding of vulnerabilities and new techniques to address them. Part of this, frankly, is just an exercise after every attack to ask, what did they do, what worked, what didn't work, how do we learn from that and apply that learning. But interestingly, a lot of this learning goes beyond the field of computer science. It goes to how do we help people, how do we help consumers, how do we help small businesses, innovate with business processes, how do we make it easier for them to update their systems. I think we have to accept an important part of the responsibility to do that. And even research in, say, the field of law and international diplomacy, because part of the solution to this problem really, in our view, does require continuing innovation in that space as well.
Last question, Brad. Are intelligence agencies actually up to this challenge, or are they lagging far behind?
Well, the world is a very diverse space. And I think we see some governments pouring large amounts of money, including into their intelligence agencies, that in part are based on protecting their countries, their communities. At times, they're based on offensive operations of various sorts. I think what we really want to advance is a common principle that governments, including intelligence agencies, should not attack civilians, especially in times of peace. They should not attack hospitals. That was part of what happened in WannaCry. They should not attack the electrical grid. That's part of what happened in the NotPetya attack in Ukraine. We need to advance a commitment to the kinds of principles that have protected people as technology has advanced in other areas of warfare, so that it also helps protect the public in what is a new era and a new generation of weapons.
Whew, so lots of potential threats out there. To find out more about the scale of the problem, we will speak to Shira Kaplan, who is founder of Cyvers, a Zurich-based cybersecurity company.
It's not only a challenge for Switzerland. Everywhere there's a lack of cybersecurity talent. And the question is now, how do you train new people, young people, to go into this profession?
CNN Money Switzerland weather. We start with the webcam of the day. Here is an overview of the values recorded in the last hours. And now the map of Swiss warnings. Let's have a look to the forecast for this afternoon. And for tomorrow. Here is an overview for the next days in German-speaking Switzerland. In western Switzerland. And south of the Alps. Thanks for following us.
Welcome back. They say there are two kinds of people in this world: those who've been hacked and those who don't know they've been hacked. And if you're one of those who knows the devastating effect it can have, you'll know that it also costs as much in reputation as it does financially. The exact costs of cybercrime are difficult to pin down. The World Economic Forum says much of it goes undetected, either because a company doesn't know its information has been stolen, or it goes unreported in order to save face. Now, in the big picture, we're looking at risks and potential tactics to tackle the problem. Shira Kaplan is founder of Cyverse, which offers cybersecurity solutions to Swiss businesses. I asked her to tell us more about this problem.
Well, it could be pretty devastating, and it really depends what kind of person or organization you are. If you're a pharma company, you could get your entire pharmaceutical company shut down. If you're a private person, your emails can get encrypted, your computers can get encrypted. It really depends, but it could be quite powerful.
And you run a cybersecurity business, so obviously, you know, there is a need for it. Do you feel like in Switzerland, people are taking it seriously?
People are taking it seriously. If you look at the numbers, in 2011, there were about 5,000 cybercrime cases that were reported to the police. By 2016, there were 3 times as many. So there's clearly an issue here. Switzerland manages 25% of the global wealth, so $6.6 trillion are managed here. This is quite an attractive place for cyber attacks.
So you would say the companies that are being the most targeted are probably financial institutions, banks, et cetera.
Yes, I would say that a lot of the companies are getting targeted, mainly financials, but we see also governmental organizations, like the case we saw with RUAG, and many other private individuals. Every third person in Zurich is a millionaire. You can imagine that private individuals are also going through this kind of, issue at the moment.
That is a pretty outstanding figure you have just thrown at me. 1 out of every third person every third person in Zurich is a millionaire. Yeah, that's a lot of money going around, but it's not only private individuals and institutions, you also have public services. You have hospitals, you have other kinds of educational systems, universities, right, that are also at risk.
Absolutely. What we saw in the UK earlier last year was an attack on the National Health Services. And this is where we see that the cyber attacks really converge with the physical world. And this is the kind of doomsday scenario. What is going to happen when hospitals get shut down or when energy facilities get attacked?
But that hasn't happened in Switzerland today.
It hasn't happened so far, but this is definitely a scenario that Switzerland is preparing for.
Who are these people? Who are these hackers?
Yeah, so there are different types of hackers, and they're doing it for different motivations. They could be actually kids, right, who are just kind
That's frightening. Yeah. That are just sitting at their computer at home.
They're just, and they're called script kiddies, right? And what they're doing is they're doing it for fun, and it's becoming more and more kind of popular to do that. Of course, the other level is the nation-state level. This is the other extreme, which we saw what happened in the U.S. With the attack on the U.S. elections. And then in between, you have these hackers for monetary purposes, companies or individuals trying to just steal information and make money out of it.
Like hackers for hire, somehow. Mercenaries, hackers.
Absolutely. This has become a very profitable service. There are services we know of called ransomware as a service, and these are people that are getting hired, and it's very, very attractive for them.
And then, of course, on the other end of the spectrum are the terrorists.
This is becoming already a little bit of a problem, right? Because the last thing we want, and this is actually where I come from, which is Israel, what people are mainly, or organizations are mainly preparing for, are terrorist organizations kind of getting into or taking over critical infrastructure. This is something that is highly, highly risky. And again, as I mentioned before, something that Europe is preparing for as well.
And are the governments doing enough to either stop or at least delay or manage the situation?
Yeah. So if we listened earlier, also 2017, to the Swiss Ministry of Defense, they said that by 2020, there are going to be 100 cybersecurity specialists in the army. And the question is it really enough?
100 doesn't sound like a lot, does it?
Well, it's not a lot, and not to compare it again with Israel, but we're also, where I come from, a country of 8 million people, we have thousands of cybersecurity specialists. So it's a question of how much money do you invest in it?
That's right. At the end of the day, it comes down to money because it is expensive, right? These kinds of, to train the people. I mean, what are your thoughts?
I think this is going to be a huge challenge for Switzerland. It's not only a challenge for Switzerland. Everywhere there's a lack of cybersecurity talent. And the question is now, how do you train new people, young people, to go into this profession?
It's a new field, relatively speaking, no?
Well, it depends where you count it. I mean, IT security has been around for 25 or 30 years. The kind of spinning into cybersecurity, is a little bit more recent in the last, I would say, 10 years. But definitely something that we have to train our young people for.
What would make me interesting as a person to be hacked?
Yeah. Well,
I mean, I don't have anything. I feel like I don't have anything, but should I be concerned? Should I be worried?
Right. So they're basically what hackers, the easiest thing for hackers to do is to encrypt your computer, block your access to all your personal files, all your photos, everything you could imagine, and ask you for ransomware, which is basically you having to pay them. And then they just collect all this money from individuals. This is the easiest stuff they could ask you to do. And this is why you would be interesting for them.
I still think of myself as so uninteresting. Like, what kind of information can an ordinary person provide?
Right, but they're not interested necessarily in the information. They're interested in you paying them to unencrypt the information that they stole from you.
So, how could somebody hack me, for example?
So the easiest way for someone to hack you is basically to, take your password, right? And, find your password. You store your password somewhere and just get into all your sensitive, e-banking, everything. So the question is, how do they get to your password? And there are multiple ways to do that.
Sounds like it's probably easier than I think. and maybe this is the overall feeling in Switzerland then? Are people just more relaxed about it? And maybe that's why, we don't have the laws in place yet and we don't have this feeling of fear, I guess, that...
Well, Switzerland feels like, feels like a secure place, right? It's all about, banking, security. It's a very secure place. But I think that there's this feeling that, it's always been about physical security. There haven't been wars. We've been protected by the Alps. So why would anyone target us? But actually, this is now changing. We see this everywhere. If you quote KPMG, their last survey on cybersecurity, 88% of the organizations that were interviewed fell prey to some kind of a cyber incident. So this is clearly something that organizations are acknowledging, and they see that they have to prepare for, and also individuals.
And media organizations?
Everyone that stores sensitive information, anybody that has kind of sensitive executive VIP information, all these things can cause a lot of damage, reputational damage, monetary damage, and everybody is preparing.
Yes, it sounds like we all have to be on our toes with this, even more so. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
So now the important question. What can we do about hackers and how can we protect ourselves? Stay with us on The Big Picture and you'll find out. CNN Money Switzerland brings you the content you need, whenever, wherever you need it. On our website, cnnmoney.ch, or on your favorite social media platform. Only from CNN Money Switzerland.
The Newsmaker is the ultimate talk show where the biggest names in Switzerland tell you their most important stories. We delve into the economy, markets, politics, real estate, media, technology, and more. to sharpen your mind and broaden your horizon. Every weekday from 8 to 9 p.m.
How do you turn your idea into a successful business in Switzerland? If you want to develop your business, have individual mentoring and coaching, optimize your business model, develop a marketing strategy, acquire new skills, learn how to network. Romandie Formation, business opportunities anywhere.
What is time? Time is definitely a weird thing, but as humans, we are deeply connected to it. We want more of it. We need more of it. The entire planet is at our fingertips, a single click away. Day and night, we are flooded by news, fake news, stories, commercials, pictures, videos, push messages, information in our digital world travels as fast as the blink of an eye. At CNNMoney Switzerland, we understand information is intrinsically linked to time.
Time directs us to the origin of a story.
Time allows us to watch it unfold.
Time is the tool we use to predict what's to come.
Our vision is to challenge news by turning a simple event into an entire story. CNNMoney Switzerland is designed to flow through information. Our network provides a unique take on live, worldwide financial news. From the heart of Europe, our live studio provides you with a detailed and sharp analysis, predicting what is yet to come. We are not your common news outlet. Instead, we act as a global catalyst of interconnected information. Watch CNNMoney Switzerland, because we value your time.
Welcome back to The Big Picture. We're focusing tonight on cybercrime. And before you think you're not a target, think again. According to a 2017 study by KPMG, more people than ever before are falling prey to cyber attacks. They say incidents here jumped 30% last year. And it's not just businesses that have been hit. Hospitals are also big targets around the world, and Switzerland is no exception. One example is a retirement home in Aargau. Lost data for more than 100 of its residents, and they paid 1 Bitcoin ransom to get that data back. Olivia Chang has a little reminder of the biggest attacks of last year.
Think you're safe online? Think again. 2017 proved to be an extremely vulnerable and expensive year. Ransomware payments hit a record of 2 billion Swiss francs. Remember WannaCry? It crippled more than 150 countries and was one of the largest cyber attacks in history, infecting over 300,000 machines. It's now been linked to North Korea. And don't forget about Equifax. Cyber criminals managed to get inside the credit bureau and steal personal data from 145 million people. But Switzerland hasn't gone unscathed. In fact, 20,000 customers from telecommunications provider Wingo were hacked in 2017. And then in August 2017, the Swiss government received a list of about 21,000 stolen records. Customers of online retail sites Digitec and Galaxus were among those affected. The latest warning came in December 2017, this time with about 70,000 stolen passwords and logins. 2017 has shown us that we can't be too careful. But with so much of our information now online, it seems that it will take more than just a password to keep us safe.
Staying vigilant is key. And to find out more about the issue, I spoke to Christian Follini, a security consultant and vice president of Swiss Cyber Experts. I began by asking him about the scale of the challenge.
Cyber attacks have been rising for a couple of years now. What we see in the industry is they're getting more and more professional. So we see real organized crime organizing them. They have their ways of sourcing attackers. They're joining forces. And there are new industries which are now exposed to cyber attacks for the first time.
What are banks doing?
Banks have been exposed to this problem for like 20 years. Since we started with online banking, they have to face attackers trying out their online banking sites. And what we're seeing now is production industry. They're digitalized their assets now, and they're facing their end customers online. So they're now facing the same problems banks had like 20 years ago, but they lack the experience. So they need to up their ante now fairly quickly because the attackers are already there, and they're seeing real digital assets to steal.
And can they look at the banking industry to see how they've managed it? I mean,
absolutely.
The banking industry, you can say, is pretty successful.
I would say banking industry in Switzerland is generally quite successful, yes.
Okay.
And so are insurance companies probably. But then e-health production is facing real problems, production industries, and all what you call digitalizations. So whatever you move online is going to be attacked. And looking to banks for a way to secure your digital assets is a good way to do. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so there might be a lot of people crossing over from taking care of the banking industry to taking care of perhaps these.
That is a trend, maybe a trend. Yeah, you could say so.
And there are there are actually a lot of attacks that happen on a company level that are not reported and go sometimes undetected on purpose or not on purpose. Why does this happen?
It's hard to detect an online attack.
It is hard to detect it.
It is generally hard to detect.
So if they put off announcing that they've had an attack, it's not because they are saving face necessarily. It's because it's hard to detect.
It's hard to detect, and then you don't really want to lose face. Unless you have to, generally you don't announce it. Yeah. And in Switzerland, you don't have to announce it, generally. So there is no law telling you that you have to announce.
So wait, so if my insurance company is hacked and they don't have an obligation to announce it and let me know?
It depends if your assets or your information has been stolen.
Right.
But let's say it's a general attack on their website. Nothing bad happened. Okay. They don't have to announce it. Whereas in other countries, they have to, which gives the government a better overview what is actually happening in the country. So Switzerland's a bit hard to tell. But then it's a small country and people talk. So we kind of know this is on the rise and we know what happens. And Switzerland is not a place where the big breaches happen. It's too small to really hit the headlines. What we see in Switzerland were successful exploits, real money stolen, wiring of money to offshore accounts. This has happened, and this hit the media. And then we had extortion of people taking down websites, blackmailing people into paying. This happens, and ransomware, and that generally is announced because it's feelable, it's visible.
And how do companies stay on top of all of these trends as they develop in hacking? I mean,
yeah, you need to be really aware of the attacks that are happening. You need to be good. You need to be at the top. You have to test your defenses constantly. You have to work with experts to come to look at your site and maybe do test attacks on you and tell you, look, there is a weakness. There you should upgrade, and this is no longer up to date. So this is a constant process. You can't say that we're secure. Security is a process that needs to roll constantly.
Even in Switzerland, where we, especially as a foreigner in Switzerland, I feel like I'm safe here. Where I leave my bag on the train and, at least 5 times out of 10, somebody will return it to me with everything in it. You don't have that impression that there is this insecurity, but it exists from what I understand.
It exists, but then there are no national borders. So an attacker who steals your purse is necessarily somebody local, whereas stealing your digital assets could be anybody from the whole world. So this border doesn't really exist. So it's just the protection of your bank that saves your money from being stolen.
Who are these hackers generally?
Oh, it's hard to tell. There's always these teenage hackers still around, the script kiddies, we call them, but there are professionals now as well. And there is real organized crime. And we talk a lot of state-sponsored attack now. Behind many different ransomware attacks, we suspect North Korea to be behind it because they really need international money. The embargo is very strong. This is a way for them to get into the money market.
Wow, it sounds like an expensive task to fend away all of these, potential attacks. I mean, I think about a small SME, for example. In Switzerland, we have so many of these SMEs that are small to medium-sized companies. They're probably, I don't know, how at risk are they? And how much do they invest?
I don't know how much they invest. I know about what they should invest. And a rule of thumb would be like 10 to 20% of your IT budget should be security. So if you invest 100,000 into IT, make sure that 20 of it goes into security. And if you have 5 IT people, make sure one of them specializes in security. I think that's a good rule of thumb. And then for smaller businesses, find an expert who does it for you and cling to a company who specializes.
But do something about it.
Absolutely, do something about it.
Nobody is safe from this kind of thing.
Nobody is safe from that, and ransomware is killing small businesses. Because if you lost all your data because your backup didn't work, then you're turf.
Is insurance the answer?
Insurance is on the rise. This is a global trend now. We see cyber insurances, but the market is not quite clear now. So we're not sure what is going to happen. How will this look like 5 years from now? The prices vary wildly. The coverage is completely unsure. So this market is in plain development. And I think for an individual company, it would be very hard to find a good offer and something that really works. But this is coming, a couple of years, this will be standard.
And speaking of trends, what other trends are we looking at in cybersecurity?
I think a general trend is we tried for 20 years now to help ourselves with technology, more technology, expensive product, cool servers. And we kind of find out this hasn't really worked very well. So a trend that I see right now is new people moving into the industry. These are no longer cyber engineers. This can be psychologists, sociologists, historians, different culture, a diversity culture, bringing new ideas. And we start to look more at humans. So how can we design systems that they become secure by intuition? And humans will simply use them in a secure way and not have to jump through 5 hoops to make it a secure system. It has to come natural. And that takes a lot more than cool tech.
Why would I, a private person, be a target of a hacker?
It could be anybody. And we underestimate the value of the information, our private information, for an attacker. Social engineering is an important topic, meaning they would take your information, trying to impersonate you on a phone call, knowing details about your private life, and try to get additional assets, like ringing up your phone company, saying your phone has been stolen, and they should send them a SIM card. And your life is taken over.
Wow. And by extension, it could affect the lives of my loved ones or my,
Absolutely.
my partner. Or
they would immediately learn about the place of school of your children, wouldn't they?
That's scary.
Yeah, absolutely. So don't underestimate the value of your assets.
So being maybe perhaps a bit more proactive rather than reactive.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. If you can be proactive, that's great. It just doesn't always work.
And where does, as we're talking about forward-looking technologies and ideas, I know you just talked about, looking at the human side, but if we just go to the technology just for a second, what role does blockchain play in all of this?
Oh, blockchain.
As it's the secure, supposedly.
I think blockchain has nothing to do with security. Blockchain is hyped now. Can you make all good use of blockchain? Yeah. I think 10% of these ideas will persist because it is actually useful in selected areas. Okay. But it's not like you
not in cybersecurity.
Oh, probably also in cybersecurity. Okay. But it's not like you sugarcoat something with blockchain and then it's secure. That's crap. Doesn't really work. You need a system that really profits from the blockchain. And that is usually a decentralized system where it helps to fix something data which is then immutable. Okay. But that's a very special characteristic, which you don't find this very often.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and to wrap it up, what can I do at home as your,
as a private user,
person, as a private person? What can I do to protect myself from being
As a private person, make sure you back up your assets. If it's honeymoon photos, your kids' photos, back up them.
On a hard backup, not
hard
the cloud.
Drive or the cloud.
Okay.
But make sure this works and update your stuff. Absolutely. Okay.
The software.
Follow the upgrades of your software.
Okay.
If you have a really old mobile phone, it's hard to say, but junk it. You need a new one that is still getting upgrades. And inform yourself, is my mobile phone getting upgrades anymore? Because usually they die off after 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
And then you will be left in the rain. And nobody's coming to tell you.
Lots to keep in mind after this. Thank you so much, Christian, for being with us
Thanks for
today
having me. It was
on
fun.
The Big Picture. That was Christian Follini from Swiss Cyber Experts. To wear or not to wear a tie? That is the question. While some of the bigger banks maintain strict dress codes, smaller banks are loosening up their tie policy. What's the rule when even CEOs such as Swatch Group's Nick Hayek or Nestlé's Mark Schneider dismiss the tie? Tanya Koenig finds out.
When dressing for success, finding the perfect fit for the workplace can be tough, especially when balancing the catwalk with the boardroom.
Almost everyone is going to use virtual.
We're used to seeing Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg in his trademark T-shirt. Certainly, dressing down is becoming more common, especially in creative and tech sectors. But how casual is too casual?
The day you will become Mark Zuckerberg, you can dress up the way you want. But unfortunately, the first impression counts.
Good morning and a warm welcome.
The way you dress sends a message too. That became obvious when Nestlé CEO Mark Schneider went tieless at their investor seminar last year.
I think Mr. Schneider adapted his dress code to the situation. When he started working for Nestlé, he just came up without tie. And therefore, the employees started to copy him because he's the CEO, and he mentioned that it's not mandatory anymore.
And it's a talking point in the banking sector too. In 2010, UBS implemented a 40-page strict dress code, which was widely criticized. A few weeks later, it was not in use anymore. Meanwhile, some banks have relaxed their rules. At the Clientis branch in the small town of Courtelary in the canton of Bern, there's no dress code at all anymore.
The goal was to be really close to the customers and to look like them. I mean, not all of them, but to have this proximity with the clients.
From CEO to the employee, dressing accordingly is key. And there's clearly a market with some workers willing to pay to be dressed from head to toe. Among the firms is Tveter. They offer a personal stylist online service.
I have here such a box now, which we put together for a 40-year-old banker. We have a very nice sacco and some colorful socks to it, which you definitely can wear. And you can combine this wonderfully with these boots, these desert boots here. Then with a more sportive outfit, we have a white shirt with a green pullover, and even the Wall Street is now opening up for such new dress codes.
Jeroen van Rooyen is familiar with being in the fashion spotlight. In 2016, he was named Switzerland's best-dressed man by the German GQ magazine.
Well, a tie has become an option today, not a must. So there is new room for playful ties. There's ties you can wear for the weekend, ties that you probably wouldn't wear to business. Of course, there's still the good old business tie. They have more micro patterns, but there's also the heavier qualities today that you can easily wear with the jeans even. Well, if you can't stand the tie, just leave it away. But then probably you go for a pocket square because that can add a little dash of color to an outfit. I'd recommend you invest in good shoes because shoes are always making the difference. And remember, women always look towards the shoes of a gentleman.
Tanya Koenig, CNNMoney Switzerland, Zurich.
All right, so Hannah Wise joins me now in the studio. Hannah, I gotta ask you, do you notice shoes?
Well, I know. I
know,
thought
right?
that too. As soon as he said that we always notice shoes, I thought, do I? I don't know, but I really liked what he was saying about the accessories. I think that's kind of more my thing that I notice in people's dresses, dress outfits, whatever.
And I gotta say, I like a guy in a tie sometimes. Doesn't have to wear a tie all the time.
Yeah.
But I think a tie also has its
Depends
moments.
on the role and the job and the meeting And the time, I guess.
Speaking of time, you were on our first hour of Swiss Pulse tonight.
Yes.
Highlights?
Yes, well, we had a massive discussion, actually, about the stock markets because they've been probably their most volatile in quite a few weeks. We saw the Dow on a 2-day drop on Monday and Tuesday. Things looking a little bit greener now across the board. All indices are kind of slightly pepped up a little bit. But we had some interesting insights because the Federal Reserve has been meeting this week. And obviously, we had the State of the Union address from President Trump yesterday. And my guest was telling me that actually, interestingly, is that while all this is going on over there, actually it really matters here in Switzerland because obviously of tax reform and the companies that work, profit repatriation, things like that. So we are very much affected by decisions that kind of happen stateside.
Over there, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And you had a guest join you also tonight, which we will see a little bit of in your next hour in the Newsmaker.
Yes, Julius Baer's current CEO, Bernhard Hodler, he's obviously taken over from Boris Collardi, who we actually spoke to here on CNNMoney Switzerland, one of the first interviews that we had. Yeah, so we've been hearing from him. He's been kind of saying that he's been accepted by the board. He's in charge. This is the way it's going to go, and he's been giving us his kind of positive outlook for 2018. So we'll actually be playing that in the next hour here on the Swiss Pulse, which is our Newsmaker hour.
Exactly, along with an interview, our star interview of this evening, which is
very exciting because it's an exclusive interview, and it is with Prince Alois of Liechtenstein. Martina Fuchs went to his fabulous castle in Vaduz, and she asked him about very many things. One very topical thing is that some people might have suggested that Liechtenstein was kind of pointing the finger at Switzerland with regard to this kind of grey list of where people have kind of more fluid tax jurisdictions. And he was actually saying, absolutely not. You know, if we could point the finger, you know, we would, but we can't. So absolutely no point. So he thinks you've got a great relationship, and he talks about regulation. He talks about all sorts of stuff. So I'm really excited to actually to play this for our viewers tonight.
Well, I will actually stay around to watch it because I have never seen Prince Alois in interviews, so we'll be looking forward to that. I know. All right, thank you so much, Hannah. And that is it for me this evening on The Big Picture. It was lovely having you. I leave you now with Hannah Wise, the Newsmaker. But before that, a little weather. Good night.
Welcome to the CNN Money Switzerland weekend weather, starting with Saturday. And here are the comfort indexes for the Swiss cities. Let's have a look for Saturday in Europe. And the comfort indexes for some cities. Let's go to Sunday in Switzerland. And here are the comfort indexes. And we end with Sunday in Europe. And discover the more attractive cities based on the weather.
CNN Money Switzerland brings you the content you need, whenever, wherever you need it. On our website, cnnmoney.ch, or on your favorite social media platform. Only from CNN Money Switzerland.
The Newsmaker is the ultimate talk show where the biggest names in Switzerland tell you their most important stories. We delve into the economy, markets, politics, real estate, media, technology, and more to sharpen your mind and broaden your horizon every weekday from 8 to 9 p.m.
How do you turn your idea into a successful business in Switzerland? If you want to develop your business, have individual mentoring and coaching, optimize your business model, develop a marketing strategy, acquire new skills, learn how to network. Autrement dit, formation, business opportunities anywhere.
What is time? Time is definitely a weird thing, but as humans, we are deeply connected to it. We want more of it. We need more of it. The entire planet is at our fingertips, a single click away. Day and night, we are flooded by news, fake news, stories, commercials, pictures, videos, push messages, information in our digital world travels as fast as the blink of an eye. At CNNMoney Switzerland, we understand information is intrinsically linked to time.
Time directs us to the origin of a story.
Time allows us to watch it unfold.
Time is the tool we use to predict what's to come.
Our vision is to challenge news by turning a simple event into an entire story. CNNMoney Switzerland is designed to flow through information. Our network provides a unique take on live, worldwide financial news. From the heart of Europe, our live studio provides you with a detailed and sharp analysis, predicting what is yet to come. We are not your common news outlet. Instead, we act as a global catalyst of interconnected information. Watch CNNMoney Switzerland, because we value your time.
In our Newsmaker Hour this Wednesday, we have exclusive access to Prince Alois of Liechtenstein at his castle in Vaduz. He gave us his thoughts on Europe's decision to place Switzerland on a so-called grey list of countries which need to do more on tax transparency.
This list is not due to Liechtenstein, and I think also the Swiss realized that it would be nice if Liechtenstein would have the power to set other countries on lists or to take them off the list. What we would have done, obviously, is taking Liechtenstein and Switzerland off the list if we would have the power. So this power lies not in Liechtenstein, but in Brussels, and I think also Switzerland has realized that.
Also in the programme, is he here to stay? It's been 2 months since Bernhard Hodler stepped into his new post as current CEO of Julius Baer, after his predecessor Boris Colladi quit for rival bank Pictet. For now, Hodler is staying tight-lipped, though, on where his future lies.
You can say that I'm the CEO, I'm nominated by the board of directors, and they really stand behind me, and also my colleagues at the executive board.
Good evening, I'm Hannah Wise, and you are watching The Newsmaker. Welcome to the Newsmaker. I'm Hannah Wise, and we start this evening with a roundup of the main news headlines from here in Switzerland and around the world. The Swiss Federal Council has been outlining new plans for tax reform. That's after changes failed to pass last year. The aim is to introduce a special tax regime for intellectual property. This tax reform is key in helping get Switzerland out of the European Union's grey list of harmful tax jurisdictions. Well, this evening, Foreign Minister Ignazio Cassis presented Switzerland's view on the bilateral relations with the EU. He wants to enter negotiations for an institutional framework agreement in 2018. US President Donald Trump delivered his State of the Union address a few hours ago. Reactions so far are mixed. According to a CNN poll, 48% of people had a positive reaction to the speech. Over the course of his 80-minute address, one of the longest ever, he heralded a soaring stock market, even as the Dow plunged on one of its worst days since 2016. Well, tax reform was also high on his list of talking points as President Trump bragged that the tax cuts Congress passed last year were the biggest in history.
Just as I promised the American people from this podium 11 months ago, we enacted the biggest tax cuts and reforms in American history.
Well, the Federal Reserve has also been meeting this week to discuss plans for the US economy in 2018. Janet Yellen will sit as chair for the very last time this Wednesday. One thing the Fed will be looking at is the job market in the private sector. Hiring continues to outperform expectations, indicating the strength of the market. Signals like this will help the Fed decide how many rate hikes to make this year. New chair Jerome Powell will replace Yellen on February the 3rd. A number of Russian oligarchs with Swiss links have appeared on a legal document published by the US Treasury this week. It's been dubbed the Putin list. Authorities have to consider whether to sanction them in return for meddling in the 2016 presidential elections and interference in Crimea. Gennady Timoshenko, the founder of oil trader Gunvor, fertilizer king Dmitry Rybolovlev were listed alongside Viktor Vekselberg, whose company Renova recently reduced its share in Swiss tech firm Salzer. And finally, it's a special day for sky gazers in Asia, Australasia and North America as a super blue blood moon is in the sky this Wednesday. This full moon is unique as it's the second full moon of the month, commonly known as the blue moon. It's also around 14% brighter than it is normally. NASA's broadcasting views from numerous points around the world, including from their bases in California and Arizona. Well, there's still plenty to come in the Newsmaker Hour this Wednesday. We're granted exclusive access to Vaduz Castle to meet Prince Alois of Liechtenstein. He tells us regulations brought in following the 2008 financial crisis were right at the time, but they should now be reduced.
We had overreaction after 2008 and 2009 on all kinds of regulation, particularly on financial sector, but it also spreads into other sectors. We see it also more and more now in industrial sector. It was right to do certain things to correct regulation, but I think it would be beneficial not only to Liechtenstein but worldwide to focus on where it really is necessary and take away other regulation.
CNN Money Switzerland brings you the content you need, whenever, wherever you need it. On our website, cnnmoney.ch, or on your favorite social media platform. Only from CNN Money Switzerland.
The Newsmaker is the ultimate talk show where the biggest names in Switzerland tell you their most important stories. We delve into the economy, markets, politics, real estate, media, technology, and more to sharpen your mind and broaden your horizon every weekday from 8 to 9 p.m.
How do you turn your idea into a successful business in Switzerland? If you want to develop your business, have individual mentoring and coaching, optimize your business model, develop a marketing strategy, acquire new skills, learn how to network. Romandie Formation, business opportunities anywhere.
What is time? Time is definitely a weird thing, but as humans, we are deeply connected to it. We want more of it. We need more of it. The entire planet is at our fingertips, a single click away. Day and night, we are flooded by news, fake news, stories, commercials, pictures, videos, push messages, information in our digital world travels as fast as the blink of an eye. At CNNMoney Switzerland, we understand information is intrinsically linked to time.
Time directs us to the origin of a story.
Time allows us to watch it unfold.
Time is the tool we use to predict what's to come.
Our vision is to challenge news by turning a simple event into an entire story. CNNMoney Switzerland is designed to flow through information. Our network provides a unique take on live, worldwide financial news. From the heart of Europe, our live studio provides you with a detailed and sharp analysis, predicting what is yet to come. We are not your common news outlet. Instead, we act as a global catalyst of interconnected information. Watch CNNMoney Switzerland, because we value your time.
Welcome back to the Newsmaker Hour here on the Swiss Pulse. Now, for some time, there have been tensions between Liechtenstein and Switzerland after some reports suggested the Principality was involved in Switzerland being added to a so-called grey list created by the EU. Now, the list highlights places accused of allowing unfair tax competition. In a rare interview at his castle, Prince Alois of Liechtenstein tells my colleague Martina Fuchs his principality had nothing to do with this, and the relationship with Switzerland is, quote, excellent. The hereditary prince also talks about the future of the former tax haven, which gave up banking secrecy nearly a decade ago.
Welcome to part one of our Newsmaker interview from Liechtenstein. Today we are at the Vaduz Castle and joined by His Serene Highness, the hereditary Prince Alois von und zu Liechtenstein. Was this the right title to properly call you?
Yes, good morning.
Liechtenstein is the sixth smallest country in the world and was founded in 1719. What is the role of the family dynasty today?
In addition to the normal family role, the family also provides the head of state in Liechtenstein and bears all the costs that come with this task.
What costs are those that you're mentioning?
Well, it's all the costs that the monarch has to bear, like giving reception, his travel costs, keeping up a castle like this, giving banquets and so on.
Liechtenstein's biggest bank, LGT, is owned by your family, plus you are the head of state of the Principality. Is this not a conflict of interest?
No, I'm not CEO and also not a board member of LGT. However, LGT is held by a holding company. The family fortune is split up between different family foundations that act as holding companies, and I'm together with other foundation members, board members on this board.
Do you think that it is compatible, however, or how do you separate your political duties and, you know, the Principality's interest with your private sector role?
Yeah, that's completely separate in the sense that it's purely very important strategic questions that come up to this level. The operating responsibility not rest with me on the business side, and also on the government side. You have a government that is responsible for the day-to-day business, the operating side. So on both areas, it's just strategic questions, and particularly on financial authorities matters, we have anyway independent financial authority that is also independent from government.
How is Liechtenstein today engaged in international business and affairs? Because for a lot of people outside of the Principality, Liechtenstein works a little bit like Liechtenstein Corp, like it's a big business. What do you respond to that?
Well, in international affairs, there is, according to Article 8 of our Constitution, a special role for the monarch, for the reigning prince. As such, I spent quite a considerable time of my work on international affairs. I regularly meet with representatives of other countries, and I decide together with the government on the general direction of our foreign policy. The day-to-day business rests then with the government, particularly our Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
How active is Liechtenstein in terms of diplomatic affairs and foreign relations with other countries? What kind of role are you hoping to play?
Well, our resources as a very small country are obviously limited. So we have to be careful, decide very well on how to allocate those limited resources. We focus to have a good relationship with our neighbors on one side, with the European countries as a member of the European Economic Areas, and then particularly on international organizations like the UN, like WTO, Council of Europe, where we can work together with many countries, UN obviously with all the countries of the world. What we can't have is direct ambassadors in every country of the world. There we have to work together with other countries.
Because you wouldn't have enough people, right? How many citizens are in Liechtenstein? About 38,000?
That's correct, yes.
Your father is one of the world's 500 richest people, and his net worth surged by 64% last year to $4.4 billion US dollars. What do you say about the reputation of Liechtenstein as an enclave for the rich only?
Liechtenstein is an international financial center. However, Liechtenstein is also among the most industrialized countries in the world per capita. We have almost 40% of people employed, and GDP is in the area of manufacturing industry. And as such, we provide many other opportunities, many other jobs and possibilities in various other sectors of the business.
As Liechtenstein is a mini-state and somewhat sandwiched between Austria and Switzerland, do you see Switzerland, which is a small country as well, as a competitor?
Switzerland is obviously a competitor in industrial world, but also in the financial sector, there particularly in the private banking sector. However, if you look at the financial sector, we also have areas that Switzerland doesn't offer in that sense, particularly in the area of asset structuring, where Liechtenstein has a unique offering in the trust and foundation sector.
A row erupted last year between Liechtenstein and Switzerland because of the EU's grey list, which basically listed 47 countries that do not comply with the tax systems of EU standards. Liechtenstein complained in Brussels that Switzerland was not part of that list. Why did Liechtenstein finger point at Switzerland?
Well, firstly, Liechtenstein didn't complain that Switzerland was not on the list. We complained that Liechtenstein was to be on the grey list. whereas other countries with a similar level that we have are not on this list. We don't see it as a problem between Switzerland and us. We see this list as such problematic. Also, the way it was created, one knows there was a lot of horse trading just before this list was published, and it's highly questionable on which countries are on the list and which are not.
But you can't deny that there are tensions between Liechtenstein and Switzerland at the moment.
We have an excellent relationship with Switzerland, and obviously if you have a very close relationship from time to time, you have certain things where you have perhaps different opinions, where you discuss things, but we are both very pragmatic and we always find good solutions.
And how strained were the relations after this dispute erupted, and what kind of means have you found to basically calm, waters down a little bit?
Well, I think it was realized also on the Swiss side that this list is not due to Liechtenstein, and I think also the Swiss realized that it would be nice if Liechtenstein would have the power to set other countries on lists or to take them off the list. What we would have done, obviously, is taking Liechtenstein and Switzerland off the list if we would have the power. So this power lies not in Liechtenstein, but in Brussels, and I think also Switzerland has realized that.
Now, both countries, Liechtenstein and Switzerland, are on this infamous grey list. How does this make you feel?
Well, I think it's annoying to be on this list, but I think one shouldn't also overestimate this list. I think the main problem is with the countries that are on the black side of the list and not the grey. The grey are those countries where one still has a discussion between the EU and those countries on changing one or two aspects of their tax systems. In the case of Liechtenstein, those are minor aspects because we have changed our tax system in 2011 to make it compatible, particularly with the EU. As we are also a member of the European Economic Area, we saw this process coming.
So which aspects do you still have to change? What kind of further measures do you need to take in order to comply with the EU standards?
It's just two small points where we have to introduce anti-abuse rules in two parts of the tax code.
Switzerland and the EU, they have some strained relations at the moment as well, because the EU offers the Swiss stock exchange access to the EU market for only 1 year. What does Liechtenstein think about, this issue?
Well, I think it's not up to us to comment the relationship or problems in the relationship. I guess at the moment it's anyway a difficult time. You have Brexit at the same time, and I guess one has to see these difficulties also in this broader context in the EU.
With regard to the EU, do you see Switzerland rather like an ally or a foe with regards vis-à-vis to the bloc?
Well, I think we have many common interests with Switzerland and we work very closely together. Obviously, we have different ways to integrate in Europe. The Swiss have the bilateral approach. We have the European Economic Area, the EEA membership. Because of those two different ways, there are sometimes areas where we have to adapt, but we try to work as closely together in the common interest.
How do you see the future bilateral relationship between Liechtenstein and Switzerland then?
I am very optimistic that we also in the future continue to have a very good relationship. We work also very closely together on international organizations like the UN, where it can be helpful to have an additional country to push forward certain ideas on WTO, where, particularly because of our custom and currency union, we work very closely together. And also regionally, we here have a very close relationship on areas like education, healthcare, where it's just more efficient to provide certain services across the border, either on the Swiss side or on the Liechtenstein side for both citizens.
This was part one of our newsmaker interview with His Serene Highness, Hereditary Prince Alois von und zu Liechtenstein. We're taking a short break here. See you soon for part two.
Well, part two will be coming up with Prince Alois in just a moment. Before that, though, we've been keeping Martina very busy here at CNN Money Switzerland. Here she is now talking to our sports correspondent, Matt Layton, about money on an Olympic scale.
Let's talk more about the logistics involved in sending the Swiss Olympic team to Pyeongchang now. And joining us here in the studio is Matt Layton, our very own sports correspondent. So, Matt, what is actually making the success of this huge project? What is really needed to make it happen?
It's Swiss logistics, as simple as that. They've been doing the Winter Games since 1924 in Chamonix. They know what they're doing. Swiss Olympics have put together a plan. The second that Sochi finished 4 years ago, it was Pyeongchang. So various delegates have been out there several times. You have to look at where you're going to stay. There's an Olympic village. Do you want to stay there, or do you need to have your athletes closer to the pistes, closer to the track? And so there's all sorts of challenges there. And what Swiss Olympics does is split it essentially into two sections. You have your sport. The management there is around about, well, it's exactly 171 athletes, all the coaches and stuff. You fly those out. Also, and that is Ralph Stockley, who's responsible for that. There's Roger Schnegg, who is the director of Swiss Olympic. He looks after the political situation, the security situation. There's 2 federal ministers going to be going out. The president, we believe, is going out for the opening. We have the sports minister going out for the closing. He has to look after the VIPs. So it's a massive logistical challenge, I suppose, to make sure everyone goes out, have a good time, and comes back safely.
It's all about teamwork in the world of sports, for sure. Now, let's talk about numbers here. How much does it all cost, and who pays the final bill?
Swiss Olympics. So it's a big story, but Swiss Olympics is the organisation who pays the cheque. They've estimated it's about a 4 million Swiss franc project over 4 years. There's a million things they have to take involved in, but if you break it down into the largest 4 or 5 different sections. So first of all, you have flights. Now, to go to Rio, they had a sponsor, but South Korea, they pay for their flights, about 750,000 Swiss for that. Then you have to look at the accommodation. Most people think that it's free. No, you have to pay for your food, your accommodation. If you're in a hotel, it can cost a fortune. It's about 730 Swiss francs. Then you have to look at the other side, medical bills, so the infrastructure, the machines, the massages and all the structures, and also putting everything in place. That's another 525,000 francs. And finally, to make the office pretty and functional, another 300,000 francs. So it's a lot of money to put the 350 people delegation, 171 athletes in place, but it's been well budgeted and it's going to be a success.
The massages will be very important, especially to treat all the sore muscles of the athletes.
Absolutely.
So for how long will these Swiss athletes stay, and where are they going to be accommodated?
Well, the Games, as we know, are 17 days, and they start in 8 days' time. But it's not as simple. 50 years ago, you were amateur, so you paid for yourself, and you went out and for 3 or 4 weeks. Now it's not a case of that. It's a case of economics, and it's a case of commitments for the athletes. Most of them have had events in the last few days. So the freestylers have been in Aspen, Colorado. They have to come back here. Normally, Switzerland flies their athletes out there about 5 or 6 days before. They'll stay for the event, and then they'll come back about 2 days later. So that's the challenge. Who is going to be named to hold the flag at the opening ceremony? It's effectively someone who's popular, someone who's there, someone who's available. And the same thing at the closing ceremony. So it's all a case of The biggest delegation goes out in about 3 or 4 days' time. That's about 80 athletes. Where they're going to stay, as I mentioned in the opening, it's a case of where their actual venue is. There's the big hub, but there's the downhill skiers who'll be staying separately, the freestylers staying separately, some in condominiums and some in hotels. So it's a huge, great logistical challenge, but Switzerland's on top of it.
The excitement is definitely heating up. Thank you so much, Matt, for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, in just a moment, we will be returning to our newsmaker interview with the Prince Alois of Liechtenstein. In the second part of this exclusive interview, he tells my colleague Martina Fuchs that he would like to see a reduction in regulations introduced after the 2008 financial crisis. Before that, though, here's your weather.
CNN Money Switzerland Business Weather, starting with Europe. Next step, Africa and the Middle East. Southeast Asia. And now Australia and Oceania. Let's go to North America. We end our trip with South America. CNN Money Switzerland accompanies you all over the world.
CNN Money Switzerland brings you the content you need, whenever, wherever you need it. On our website, cnnmoney.ch, or on your favorite social media platform. Only from CNN Money Switzerland.
The Newsmaker is the ultimate talk show where the biggest names in Switzerland tell you their most important stories. We delve into the economy, markets, politics, real estate, media, technology, and more to sharpen your mind and broaden your horizon. Every weekday from 8 to 9 p.m.
How do you turn your idea into a successful business in Switzerland? If you want to develop your business, have individual mentoring and coaching, optimize your business model, develop a marketing strategy, acquire new skills, learn how to network. Romandie Formation, business opportunities anywhere.
What is time? Time is definitely a weird thing, but as humans, we are deeply connected to it. We want more of it. We need more of it. The entire planet is at our fingertips, a single click away. Day and night, we are flooded by news, fake news, stories, commercials, pictures, videos, push messages, information in our digital world travels as fast as the blink of an eye. At CNN Money Switzerland, we understand information is intrinsically linked to time.
Time directs us to the origin of a story.
Time allows us to watch it unfold.
Time is the tool we use to predict what's to come.
Our vision is to challenge news by turning a simple event into an entire story. CNN Money Switzerland is designed to flow through information. Our network provides a unique take on live, worldwide financial news. From the heart of Europe, our live studio provides you with a detailed and sharp analysis, predicting what is yet to come. We are not your common news outlet. Instead, we act as a global catalyst of interconnected information. Watch CNN Money Switzerland, because we value your time.
Welcome back to the Swiss Pulse, where our newsmaker this Wednesday is Prince Alois of Liechtenstein. In the second part of our exclusive interview at Vaduz Castle, he tells Martina Fuchs the world would benefit from less financial regulation. He also says he's welcoming new innovation, but doesn't support Bitcoin or blockchain.
Welcome back to part 2 of our newsmaker interview today with His Serene Highness, Hereditary Prince Alois von und zu Liechtenstein. What is Liechtenstein's long-term future? How do you hope the Principality to be in like 1 decade from now?
Well, I hope that the Principality will be very similar to now, as we I think are very well positioned, have a very high quality of living in Liechtenstein. But we will have to change in order to maintain this position, continually improve our framework for the business community to operate here, to improve the attractiveness of the country, the infrastructure and so on.
Liechtenstein is a world-famous tax haven, but in 2009 it abolished the banking secrecy laws. How are you trying to reposition yourself as a private banking hub?
Well, we were one of the early adapters of information exchange in tax matters, automatic information exchange on tax matters, and we successfully introduced other OECD and EU requirements on transparency. But it takes some time to spread this message to all the relevant players at the international and national financial authorities, to the financial community as such. And there we will, in the next months and years, strengthen or continue to improve our communication effort.
On the one hand side, I believe Liechtenstein is still a very traditional, a bit conservative country, but you're opening up in various areas to attract more players, as you mentioned. What about innovation companies and startups? How can you lure more outside, businesses to Liechtenstein?
Well, Liechtenstein was always a very attractive place for startups and for innovation. Liechtenstein has a very entrepreneurial culture. We have 1 operating company per 9 inhabitants, and we have, with more than 7% of R&D, 7% of GDP invested in R&D, one of the highest percentages worldwide. This has been largely also thanks to having a continuous improvement process with regards to the regulatory framework, to make sure that we have an attractive framework in Liechtenstein, but also improvements on infrastructure and particularly education. In the next years, I see a specific focus on everything in those areas just mentioned, education, infrastructure and regulation with regard to the digital development.
You've mentioned before the automatic exchange information rules by the EU and the OECD. Are you scared of more regulations, that will make it more difficult for businesses to operate here?
I think we had overreaction after 2008 and 2009 on all kinds of regulation, particularly on financial sector, but it also spreads into other sectors. We see it also more and more now in industrial sector. It was right to do certain things to correct regulation, but I think it would be beneficial not only to Liechtenstein but worldwide to focus on where it really is necessary and take away other regulation. But we also see that regulation are usually cooked up by the big countries, nowadays quite often in the G20 context, and they're not considering quite as much, how is it for smaller countries, with smaller bureaucracies to take on then this regulation. We quite successfully managed that, but we would hope that we can bring the interests of smaller countries more in, because we are more sensible to make sure that we regulate without creating too much burden, which would, at the end of the day, also help the bigger countries.
How difficult and frustrating is it for you as a small but rich player to basically obey by the rules of the big?
Well, we always had to do that. As a very small countries, you can't influence the international rules. You find a way where you can find your niches to operate then in the international environment. And as a very small country, if you want to be successful, you have to be very international. If we have, like Liechtenstein, a country of 38,000 inhabitants, if we would have to sell everything in Liechtenstein that we produce, or also all the services that we produce in Liechtenstein here, then we would have to move back to subsistence farming. So we have to import almost everything to have a sophisticated economy, and to pay for these imports, we have to export in areas where we can be world leaders. And that has been our model in the past. And in order to ensure that, we need to make sure that we adhere also to international regulation, that we can offer our products, our services worldwide.
Talking about new markets, are cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin also something that you're looking at?
There are startups in Liechtenstein working in the area of blockchain technology. However, it has always been Liechtenstein's approach to focus on good education, good infrastructure, but good regulation in general, and then to leave it to the markets on where to development. So we try not to second guess which are the technologies of the future. We have been successful in the past to leave those decisions to the market and to our entrepreneurs.
Then also in Switzerland, for example, we have the Crypto Valley in Zug, so maybe there would be some kind of competition again.
Well, I think competition is always healthy. It has been also healthy in the past. We are competing with Switzerland on private banking, and I think the good thing is with competition you push yourself forward, and you see it quite often. You have better products, better services when you have in a street several shops that offer the same thing. And quite often they attract then together more customers than if they would have just one shop where they could only go to this shop.
Coming back again to the competition question with Switzerland in terms of private banking, how can you be different from the Swiss private banks? And to which extent do you think you're actually really in the same bucket but have to gain market share?
Well, Switzerland offers, as a much larger country, all the various different financial services. Liechtenstein is more specialist that focus on wealth management with a very long-term orientation. with an special strong expertise both in asset management and in asset structuring. And as I explained before, on the asset structuring side, we also can differentiate ourselves compared to Switzerland because they don't have the same regulation and as such also not the same sectors with regard to trust and foundation sector.
If we take a crystal ball, what will Liechtenstein's future business model be? How will the economy and the country look like in 10, 20 years from now?
I'm very confident that in 10, 20 years, Liechtenstein will continue to have a very broadly diversified economy with both a strong industrial and a strong financial sector. However, the business models of the individual companies in those various sectors will have considerably changed by then, mainly due to digitalization.
Is this one of the biggest challenges that the economy here is facing?
I think it's one of the biggest challenges for all economies around the world, as digitalization really affects every part. It does not only affect companies that have to do with the internet, it affects agriculture just as much as the financial sector, industry. 4.0 is a big theme. As such, we also try to encourage this effort broadly and don't just focus on the financial sector with fintech, for instance.
And do you think that Liechtenstein is fast enough to adapt to these fast challenges?
One of the big advantages of being a very small country is that the decision-making processes are much faster than in bigger countries.
Faster than in Switzerland?
Even faster than in Switzerland. That is partly due to a different political setup that we have also very strong direct democracy, but it can be faster to come to decisions, even so if a referendum is taken or initiative is brought in Liechtenstein, whereas Switzerland, being a much larger country, also because it doesn't have a constitutional court that says this regulation is not, or this initiative is not according to our constitution, has a longer process of making decision. In Switzerland, quite often it takes at least 2 years for a proposal to pass, also because of its federal structure and so on. And that's much faster in Liechtenstein.
Now, a lot of people around the world believe that monarchies and principalities are outdated, but the family dynasty here in Liechtenstein still has a huge popular support base. Why is that?
I believe that people in Liechtenstein have had very good experience and they understand the benefits of our form of monarchy in Liechtenstein.
And they have one of the highest living standards in the world?
Yes, that obviously they had a good experience with it. I think that they also understand that in Liechtenstein, unlike other monarchies in the world, we combine in a unique way a monarch that has considerable rights and responsibilities on one side, with the right of the people to have a vote of non-confidence against the monarch, or to through the right to abolish the monarchy through a popular vote. And this system ensures on one side that the reigning prince has, or his representative, has to act in the long-term interest of the people. If he wouldn't do that, he would quickly have a problem. And on the other hand, it gives the advantages that come with a strong monarchic element, that is particularly stability, long-term orientation, continuity in politics. The prince can also stand above party lines and as such mediate between parties in cases of blockades. He can also be an independent voice for minority interests should they be impaired. And then, as with other monarchies in the world, a monarchy is also a strong identity factor for a state.
How are your relations with other monarchies, you know, the UK or Belgium, elsewhere around the world? How strong are these connections, these networks?
We are, to some extent, related, family-wise.
Do you have annual parties or gatherings?
Yes. From time to time, you see each other at weddings, at birthday parties, other celebrations. So there's a regular occasions to meet with each other, yes.
Do you see the dynasty of Liechtenstein continue for the next decades or centuries to come?
I don't see any reason why it shouldn't, and I'm very confident that it will.
His Serene Highness, Hereditary Prince Alois von und zu Liechtenstein, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Well, you've been watching the Newsmaker Hour here on the Swiss Pulse. And a little bit earlier on our Living Markets Hour, we took a deeper dive into Julius Baer and the man at the helm. It's been about 2 months since CEO Bernhard Hodler took over the reins from his predecessor, Boris Collardi. Earlier today, my colleague Olivia Chang asked him the big question everyone was wondering. Is he the CEO for the long run or not?
Mr. Hodler, today we saw good results in line with expectation, but share price was down. How can we explain that?
I explain it the way that our share price was substantially up the last month and particularly the last week. So I expected it to be a little bit weaker, but with the results, I'm very happy.
How much of your predecessor, Boris Collardi, do we see in these results?
Look, we obviously were working on these results as a team, and not only Boris Collardi and Bernhard Hodler. I think the whole leadership team and our 6,000 employees made it happen.
That brings me to the big question of the day. What is your role? Can I say you're the CEO in the long run?
You can say that I'm the CEO. I'm nominated by the board of directors, and they really stand behind me, and also my colleagues at the executive board.
How long do you see yourself in this role?
As long as it takes, to implement the strategy.
How did you manage to convince the board that you were the right guy for the role? What were you bringing to the table?
Look, they nominated me as deputy even before. They know me since almost 20 years. So I think for them it was a relatively easy step to say he is somebody that can actually lead that company and continue the growth.
So what we know is that you are CEO right now. How do you plan to make your mark?
I think that we have a good strategy. I've been part of the team to shape it and to implement it. I'm sure that we have areas where we can sharpen it, and I explained it today, in the press conference. I think what is very important for us is to make sure that we continue to be in this, I call it a bit sweet spot, the interface to the client, and to be regarded as trusted advisor, and also using this claim as an open platform. So that will be my mark.
You mentioned strategy. How much of that is going to stray away from your predecessor?
It's mainly, I would say, the focus, because you cannot be everything for everybody. You cannot do everything for all the clients. So we will need to focus a little bit more, which markets are important, and invest even more money into these markets, and maybe for some small markets to be more standardized. So the differentiating factor, I think, will be focus.
Well, you mentioned markets. Where does Asia come into this?
Asia is absolutely important for us. We have, in the meantime, we have about a quarter of our assets in Asia. I see lots of growth opportunities still in Asia, and we have a very good local regional leadership there.
Can we expect you to do much traveling there?
I actually lived in Asia for a couple of years in my previous role before I joined Julius Baer. I traveled very extensively in my former roles, so 3-4 times I was in Asia, and I will continue to do that.
And where else do you see growth potential?
There are lots of other regions that are interesting. I would like to mention Latin America. I see growth potential there. And you've seen this morning that we just announced another deal that will strengthen our position in Brazil.
I want to mention just the business models of private banks. How are we supposed to compete against the local players around the world?
That's definitely a stronger competition for us because they have the local know-how, the local products. The disadvantage of the local players vis-à-vis Julius Baer is exactly this global reach. So we're not only the know-how locally, we can bring the know-how globally into the picture. And I think specifically for larger clients, that's not only an interesting aspect, it's something that they really need.
But what is the value proposition of a Swiss bank? What can they be offering?
The value proposition is that we have a model that is based on global know-how of the markets, global know-how of the products. If you look at Julius Baer, we have gone local much more over the last years. And that's very simply because the markets we concentrate in, we have to make sure that we understand it really well.
But do you see some of this competitive edge wearing off?
I don't see that. Look, of course, people think that it was based also on this tax transparency thing. Now we have the tax transparency globally, with automatic exchange of information. And I see that, with the strengths and the background and the history and the DNA in this business, in the wealth management business, we still have a strong position going forward.
How much does this automatic exchange of information, since it kickstarted this year, how does that affect your business?
Not a lot, because what happened is, the VDPs, voluntary disclosure programs, have also obviously been done before, and they were reflected in some of our numbers because we also had some outflows. If people didn't want to go through the program and not be tax transparent, we had to exit, but that's almost finished. This year, I would say, if I look at net new money, we had an outflow of about 1 billion, and next year I expect that to be much smaller.
Now, I can't let you go without asking, what is your outlook for the market in 2018?
I'm positive. I think the economic outlook is good. Corporate earnings are strong. Corporate balance sheets are strong. The gross domestic product globally will grow. I see some risks from the political side, specifically protectionism or some more restrictive trade globally. But overall, we are fairly optimistic.
Mr. Hodler, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's all we have time for in this edition of the Swiss Pulse. You can see all our stories on our website. Just head to www.cnnmoney.ch. We'll be back for more tomorrow, Thursday, starting from 6. See you then. Bye-bye.
CNN Money Switzerland brings you the content you need, whenever, wherever you need it. On our website, CNNMoney.ch, or on your favorite social media platform. Only from CNN Money Switzerland.
The Newsmaker is the ultimate talk show where the biggest names in Switzerland tell you their most important stories. We delve into the economy, markets, politics, real estate, media, technology, and more to sharpen your mind and broaden your horizon. Every weekday from 8 to 9 p.m.
How do you turn your idea into a successful business in Switzerland? If you want to develop your business, have individual mentoring and coaching, optimize your business model, develop a marketing strategy, acquire new skills, learn how to network. Romandie Formation, business opportunities anywhere.
What is time? Time is definitely a weird thing, but as humans, we are deeply connected to it. We want more of it. We need more of it. The entire planet is at our fingertips, a single click away. Day and night, we are flooded by news, fake news, stories, commercials, pictures, videos, push messages, information in our digital world travels as fast as the blink of an eye. At CNNMoney Switzerland, we understand information is intrinsically linked to time.
Time directs us to the origin of a story.
Time allows us to watch it unfold.
Time is the tool we use to predict what's to come.
Our vision is to challenge news by turning a simple event into an entire story. CNNMoney Switzerland is designed to flow through information. Our network provides a unique take on live, worldwide financial news. From the heart of Europe, our live studio provides you with a detailed and sharp analysis, predicting what is yet to come. We are not your common news outlet. Instead, we act as a global catalyst of interconnected information. Watch CNNMoney Switzerland, because we value your time.
For somebody to tell you their story, it's something I take really seriously, and it's not something